Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Salebox for the 23rd of December 2013. My name is TotalBiscuit, rounding up today's Steam deals. If you missed yesterday's show, do not worry, the deals are still available for the next 20 or so hours, so by all means, go and check out yesterday's Salebox video. Let's kick it off, shall we, with Reus. 75% off, takes down to $2.49, €2.49, and £1.74. This is basically a god game, two-dimensional specifically. You have this world that you can wander around sideways. So think about the world being flat and it being represented as a sphere, which is weird because the sphere is a three-dimensional object, but you get the idea. It's a bloody circle. And everything you do is based around that circle. So, you know, there can be something on the other side of the planet, which happens to be upside down. You see how it works. But you can also, of course, rotate the circle to actually see what's going on. Now you can use these various giant spirits or gods of different things, like the god of stone, the god of water, and things like that, to change various aspects of the world and use special powers to build up villages, complete quests, and things like that. It all sounds good in theory, but in practice I found, after playing a few hours of it, that the implementation was just a little bit too slow. It didn't help that the game didn't autosave properly, so I had to redo the whole bloody thing again. The tutorial is very, very lengthy, and everything in general just moves really slowly, including the giants that you have in the background that are able to actually do stuff for you. I personally got bored after a few hours and couldn't get any further in it, which is a bit depressing for me because I loved the god game genre and I was kind of sad to see it go away, but it doesn't seem like Reus is really the title to change that. I'd give it a tentative recommendation if you happen to have the patience to make your way through the hour upon hour of content that isn't all that interesting to get to the stuff that is. And of course the price tag is quite attractive. It's not a big investment, but I will say that for those of you with little patience, Reus is definitely not going to be the game for you. Arma 3, 40% off, that's $35.99, €26.99, and £23.99. This is, of course, the latest in the most popular series of milsims on the planet, that being Arma, which got even more popular during the Arma 2 DayZ mod release. Arma 3 is really good at what it does, but bear in mind you might not like what it does. That's the interesting thing about it. This is not for the faint of heart. It is a military simulation. There is a hell of a lot of complexity involved. It is absolutely best played with an organized group, although they have started to release the episodic campaign. The first episode is out, and the second episode is coming. It's graphically extremely impressive, and the size of the world, as well as the accurate simulation of military hardware, is really quite peerless when it comes to games on the PC at the moment. But it is certainly not for everyone. It does what it does very well. It kind of requires a monster PC to really run particularly well, so that's something to consider there. And the multiplayer is still a little bit sketchy. It's getting better, but on release the multiplayer had a lot of problems. So this is one of these niche titles that is hard to recommend on that basis. It requires a degree of perseverance to really get the most out of, and I've heard of people getting huge amounts out of the Arma series and really enjoying it an awful lot. Unfortunately, as a large milsim has the tendency to be, it's a bit buggy, requires a monster PC, and has a great deal of complexity. Like Train Simulator, I think it's one of those weird titles to recommend because I feel the people that wanted it in the first place already have it. This is really an opportunity, I think, for those who are interested in the concept but didn't buy in at full price to grab it on the cheap. But do beware, it is not necessarily an easy ride. Amnesia, a machine for pigs, 50% off, that's $10, €7.99, and £6.49. I may be the worst person to ask about this because I really object strongly to the way that the Chinese room does their development. I believe their design philosophy is the antithesis of the kind of stuff that I like. So I'm a little biased against this title, however I would not be the only one. The general consensus among people that enjoyed the original Amnesia, The Dark Descent, is that this game is not the same. It's not developed by the same company, it is not the same design philosophy, it's not even really the same style of game, even though it looks quite similar. It has a really good story, and it is atmospheric. However, it lacks a sense of danger, and really, it's an on-rails experience. It's almost like the horror version of Dear Esther, in the sense that they only want you going one way at the pace that they want you going at. And it's really as simple as that. They have removed anything but the most basic puzzles. The game is highly linear, with doors sealed off, to make sure that you can't actually go anywhere but the way you're supposed to go. And overall, it seems like the Chinese room have a weaker grasp of horror than someone like Frictional would, which is to be expected, don't get me wrong. Why would you expect the Chinese room to really be as good as that? The game fails in a wide variety of different ways to actually scare you, and I think that's the complaint that Dodger came up with, having played the damn thing, and the original saying, look, it's just not scary. And a number of reasons are given for that, not least of which the fact that the game absolutely loves to show you the enemies at every possible opportunity, to the point where you get up close and personal, they're no threat, you can just walk through a door to make them disappear, they don't pursue you very much, and as a result it becomes an exercise in storytelling, not actual survival horror. So that is my opinion on it based on the lengthy research I've done. I think I've researched this game more than any other because I was very curious to see what people had said about it. I watched untold numbers of videos about A Machine for Pigs, and the conclusion I've come up with is I think people would have been more happy with it if it wasn't an Amnesia game. But it is. So there you go. Shadowrun Returns. 55% off, that takes it down to $8.99, €8.54 in Tier 1, $6.29 in Tier 2, and £6.74 in the UK. This is one of those games that got Kickstarter funding, but not to a ludicrous degree. You know, it's not one of the $3 or $4 million projects. And it came out, and you know what? I was actually pretty damn happy with the result. It's a game that I backed, and having played it, I think it's pretty good for what it is. It does, however, have its limitations. It's a smaller game than I think a lot of people expected it to be. It's not so much an open-world CRPG, although it does have a lot of the CRPG elements, and it does have these sort of open hub areas, but more often than not, you cannot go back to old areas in the game, and this is also compounded by its save system, which does not actually allow you to save anywhere. It's something that they are apparently working on for the next patch, which comes with a free DLC, but it is a problem for some players. I, however, really enjoyed both the combat system, although it wasn't outstanding, and the dialogue system, which was outstanding. Yeah, it was just a really well-written set of conversations with some very interesting characters, and the art style was great too. It reminded me of the older CRPGs like Baldur's Gate and Planescape Torment, but brought bang up to date with a nice clean but neon style. Definitely gave me that cyberpunk feel. For someone that doesn't really know anything about the Shadowrun world, I found myself drawn into it, and for what it was, I really enjoyed myself with Shadowrun Returns. I'm also looking forward to the new campaigns that are coming in both DLC, as well as from the Steam community itself, since this game actually does feature the Steam Workshop, and there are already numerous pieces of user-generated content coming your way. Splinter Cell Blacklist, 50% off, taking it down to $30, €24.99, £14.99, and $34.96 in Australia. Good deal for those in the UK, I feel, which tends to be the way when you're dealing with anything that was £30 originally. So this is a game that actually got an awful lot of praise, and yet sort of slid past silently in the night for whatever reason. Splinter Cell's kind of been all over the place, especially for the last few games. Conviction and Double Agent did not perhaps get the rave reviews and sales that Ubisoft was looking for here, and Blacklist goes a little bit back to its roots, especially when it comes to the multiplayer, which remains absolutely excellent in the form of spies versus mercenaries, but doesn't quite get there. It's one of the stealth optional Splinter Cell games, whereas the original games had a very heavy emphasis on stealth. It's gradually got less and less, and it's now really become the domain of stealth action, where yes, you can stealth it, or you can kill people, or you can do a violent but non-lethal approach, and there are 3 different ways of doing each level. Kind of the Deus Ex way of doing it, at least the Deus Ex Human Revolution way of doing things, and it seems to work pretty well, and it's definitely not a bad game. The multiplayer in itself is absolutely outstanding, although do bear in mind that the game is another one of those Uplay ones, so if you have any problems with the Ubisoft Uplay client, then bear in mind you're going to have to be dealing with that. Regardless, for someone that's not hugely into stealth, I found Blacklist to be surprisingly enjoyable and well put together, which was a surprise, I think, for a lot of people, because they weren't really expecting too much from it. However, if you're a stealth purist, then perhaps it might be a game that is not up your alley anymore. It's not an amazing price for it. I mean, it's still a AAA game that did only come out a few months ago, so you can't really expect a deep discount, but if it was a game you were looking into, then now is the time to grab it. Borderlands 2, 75% off. That is $15 at €12.49, £9.99 and $20 in Australia. Well, I think you know my opinion on Borderlands 2 by now. I've said it time and time a bloody again. However, this is actually the Game of the Year edition they're discounting right here, so that's a little bit better value. In this case, what you get is a bunch of packs, which includes the Psycho pack, by the way, which is the Psycho Bandit class, along with the Necromancer pack. So there's actually 6 classes in total available. You then get Captain Scarlet and her Pirate's Booty, the Creature Slaughterdome, Mr. Talk's Campaign of Carnage, Sir Hamlock's Big Game Hunt, Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep, which is, I think by many people considered to be one of the best pieces of DLC, and also the Ultimate Vault Hunters upgrade pack, which is something that pushes the level cap up a bit and gives you some new weapons and equipment to play with. Now, bear in mind there is more DLC coming for this particular game, which is a little bit weird because you'd think this would be the whole lot. And for the most part it is, but they are bringing out more stuff because they apparently love milking Borderlands. It is not a game that I personally enjoy. It is a game that a lot of people do enjoy, however. I found the gunplay to be little improvement on the original, which wasn't that good to begin with. I found the quests to be very monotonous, the enemies to be bullet spongy, and the sense of humor to be somewhat cringe-worthy. However, I really think I'm in the minority there. A lot of people really enjoy the co-op aspect to it, although there is not that much class synergy since, let's be honest, there aren't really all that many class abilities. Each class only has one, and everything else is passive. But if you're the kind of person that wants to play an FPS for loot, then Borderlands is still your best option for that. The DLC is a mixed bag. I think that Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep is probably the best. It's quite funny, it really does depart from the usual setting of Borderlands, and it's certainly worth a play, and this is a good value pack. It's hard to argue with the amount of value you get here. You can just get Borderlands 2 for half the price, but with the amount of stuff they throw at you, I think that the Game of the Year edition is by far the best value. Castle Crashers, 75% off, that's $3.74, €2.99 and £2.49. A long time ago, this was one of the best Xbox Live Arcade games ever. It was also one of the only Xbox Live Arcade games ever, so that's something to consider. This game is freaking old. It was one of the games to come out very early on in the Xbox 360's lifespan, and it doesn't really show it as a result of having a really nice two-dimensional art style, but I would say the port is pretty basic. It's what you would expect and little more than that. You can play it with the keyboard, but a controller is certainly a better option for this title in my opinion. Now, the cool thing about it is that it's a brawler, and you don't get all that many of those on the PC, and it reminds me very much of Golden Axe and titles like Streets of Rage in the past. Although I've got to say it does have its problems with enemies taking too long to kill, and there being a general lack of attacks. There's a lot of characters and weapons in the game, but the actual moveset of each character is a little bit weak, so it's more focused on the co-op hack-and-slash experience. To their credit, they did a really good job of creating a variety of different levels and strange minigames and events to actually keep people interested, and it definitely bears multiple playthroughs, although it is of course better played with friends rather than alone. It does have multiplayer online, and it also has local co-op, which I would certainly recommend. So it's a fun little title with a great sense of humor and a really nice art style, but it does get a little samey after a while. Contagion, 75% off, that's $3.74, €3.49 and £2.99. This is a really weird discount because it's very heavy on a game that's still in early access, which is really strange. Usually you see these kind of 30-40% discounts at most on early access, but a big cut this early is quite surprising. It makes me think maybe they need to increase the number of players in their beta test in order to really make things work, and this is the way they happen to be doing it. It is developed by the guys behind Zombie Panic Source, which was a pretty good zombie game, and it focuses on co-op survival horror, although you can also become a zombie, as you might imagine. I'm gonna be honest though, I don't know a huge amount about it. I always caution against buying into early access games. I feel that unless you know a great deal about the concept and the developer behind it, you shouldn't be buying into something that clearly isn't finished. And this is what I would say about Contagion, although the discount is perhaps deep enough that a lot of people will be interested regardless. That said, it's not like we don't have co-op survival zombie games. We have plenty of them, as it turns out. But it's certainly a very deep discount on a game that seems to have potential, but I can't give you a recommendation either way, I'm sorry. It's just not one of those games that has a lot of information out about it and that I've really had any time to assess meaningfully. And finally, my deal of the day has got to go to Trine 2, the complete story, a ridiculous 90% off, which takes it down to $2, €1.69 and £1.39. This is a co-op, but not necessarily puzzle platformer. Yeah, I'm giving you a puzzle platformer as my deal of the day. Why? Because it's goddamn beautiful, for one thing. It's an incredibly gorgeous world. One of the best looking games I've seen on PC in the last few years. Not only that, but it's got great co-op, yet is still very much playable in single player mode. The game features 3 characters, a knight, a wizard, and a thief, all who have their own individual abilities, which you can switch between at will during single player, but in co-op, of course, you have one of each, which is a rather fun way of doing things. It's got a good amount of combat in it, incredibly designed levels with all sorts of different ways to break them. That's probably one of the coolest things about it. The puzzles can be solved in ways that are perhaps unexpected. It also has a incredible narrator with a really cool storybook feel to it, and it is just gorgeous. I need to re-emphasize just how bloody brilliant the game actually looks. The complete story also comes with the DLC, which has got the Goblin Menace expansion pack in it, which includes the Dwarven Caverns level. It is so very good. And usually I don't like these kind of games, but Trine is one of those rare exceptions where you can just tell that such love and attention was slathered onto this game, and it just ends up being a great experience for everybody. Please buy Trine 2. It's that damn good. Alright folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the sale box. I think that's pretty much me done until after Christmas. I'm going to take Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and probably Boxing Day off if you don't mind. I want to spend some time with the family. I have some visitors coming over to the house for Christmas, so I want to make sure that I give them my full attention. My apologies, but hey, it's Christmas time. Focus on the family, folks, and that's really what you should be doing. So you go do that. Yeah, off you go. Have a fantastic Christmas, folks. Please do. And I will see you next time.